Welcome to the deep dive. We're jumping straight into Real Madrid's latest match.
That tight 1-0 win over Alavés.
Exactly. We've got a couple of, analyses here. One's called match review, the other just review.
Right.
And our mission today is really to pull out the key stuff for you.
Yeah.
The moments that mattered, the controversies.
Yeah, cut through the noise, basically. Understand what these sources are telling us about the game and maybe what it means going forward for Madrid.
Okay, so let's start right there. The scoreline. 1-0. Goal from Camavinga.
Yep. And interestingly, Match Review actually calls it his best action of the whole season.
That's quite a statement, isn't it?
It is. And Review adds a bit of texture to that. They sort of suggest the game was pretty chaotic around that time,
Wow.
and that Camavinga actually thrives in that kind of disorder.
So it wasn't just a good goal. It was maybe the type of game situation that suits him.
Exactly. That's the interesting angle from Review. It implies that when things get messy, less structured, Camavinga's improvisation really comes to the fore. It's a good reminder for listeners, that pure tactics aren't everything. Sometimes you need players who just handle chaos well.
Makes sense. But despite that moment of brilliance and the win, Match Review described Real Madrid's overall performance as, I think the word was discreet.
Yeah, quite discreet, especially early on, 11 versus 11.
What did they pinpoint?
Well, the familiar point about the lack of consistent high pressing came up again.
Okay.
Meaning they weren't really squeezing Alavés high up the pitch, allowing them to sort of advance maybe a bit too easily at times.
Is that seen as a recurring issue then, based on the review?
It seems to be flagged as a typical problem, yeah. Raises that question again, is it tactical, conserving energy, or just something they struggle with sometimes?
And things really shifted after the Mbappe red card, didn't they?
Oh, massively.
Match Review said they went into absolute retreat, went down to 10 men.
Yeah. Sounds like they were really pinned back defensively under pressure.
But they held on.
They did, which, speaks to some resilience there, even if the performance wasn't dominant. And ultimately, as both sources say, it's 3 points. Keeps them in the La Liga race, just the 4 points behind Barcelona.
Right. Crucial points. Now, what about Alavés? Did they pose much of a threat? Madrid weren't firing on all cylinders, apparently, but...
Well, Match Review suggests Alavés were pretty limited offensively.
Oh, really?
Yeah, their main tactic seemed to be just hitting crosses in from the sides.
And Madrid dealt with that.
Apparently so. Defended those crosses well, according to Review. It makes you wonder, if Alavés had another plan or if maybe injuries limited them.
Ah, yes, injuries. Match Review mentioned those too. Their usual keeper, Severa, was out.
Yeah, and his replacement apparently made some mistakes. That's always tough.
And outfield players too. Abkar and Garidi.
Also mentioned as being out due to injury. So yeah, Alavés were definitely facing some challenges even before the whistle. It puts their performance in context, maybe explains why they couldn't really exploit Madrid's quieter moments.
Okay, let's talk about the big flashpoint. Mbappe's red card.
Yep, big moment.
Match Review was pretty blunt, called it unjustifiable. A very hard tackle. No doubt about the red, they said.
Both sources seem clear on that. It was a definite sending off. What's interesting for listeners, though, is the knock-on effect.
The suspension.
Exactly. Match Review speculates maybe 2 games, but if it's longer, say more than 3...
Then it could impact the Copa del Rey final.
Potentially, yeah. That would be a huge blow for Madrid.
And Review added some context maybe about his mindset, mentioned he apologized afterwards.
Yeah, apologized to Blanco, the player he fouled, and his teammates.
Okay.
And the review suggested maybe some frustration played a part. Playing as the lone striker, not getting much service, getting fouled a bit by Mourinho and Abkar earlier.
Not an excuse, obviously, but maybe an explanation for the reaction.
That's how review framed it, yeah. Kind of humanizes it. They also noted it's not typical Mbappe behavior.
Though Match Review did apparently draw a line back to a similar red card he got years ago in a French Cup final.
That's right, 2019. So, while rare, maybe not totally out of the blue under pressure, it does make you think, doesn't it, about the pressure these top guys are under in these physical games.
Definitely. Then, almost balancing things out, Alavés lost the player too, Manu Sanchez.
Right, numerical equality restored.
Another straight red. Match Review said it was for a foul on Vinicius. Maybe not quite as bad as Mbappe's tackle, but still a red.
That was the take, yeah.
Yeah.
And interestingly, Review mentioned that the ref actually missed it initially.
Oh, really? So it needed VAR assistance?
Presumably. But both sources seem to agree, ultimately it was a red card offense.
And tactically significant.
Hugely. As Match Review points out, going back to 10 versus 10 really changed the dynamic again. Madrid seemed to get more control back after that. It sort of canceled out the disadvantage they'd been under.
Were there other refereeing controversies mentioned? Aside from the Reds?
A couple of debated moments, yeah. Match Review talked about a potential penalty shout for Arda Güler.
Given.
No. And the commentator quoted apparently agreed with the ref, no penalty.
Okay. Anything else?
There was also a goal disallowed. Asensio scored, but it was chalked off for a foul by Rudiger on the keeper. Oh no.
And the verdict on that one?
The commentator seemed to think that was the correct call too. So yeah, the ref definitely had a few key decisions to make. Adds to the whole post-match debate, you know.
Absolutely. Let's shift to some individual Madrid performances. We mentioned Camavinga, already goal scorer, thrived in the chaos.
Yep. Earned his praise, clearly, decisive moment, and suited the game's feel according to the reviews.
But Match Review actually gave man of the match to someone else.
They did. Tchouaméni.
Ah, interesting. Why him?
For his defensive work, that stability in midfield seems like he was the crucial shield, especially when they were down to 10 men, holding things together.
Makes sense. On the flip side, though, sounds like Arda Güler maybe didn't quite grab his chance.
Yeah, Match Review noted a lack of impact from him and even floated the idea of a loan move, for more consistent minutes.
Right. Development time. And Rodrigo, still struggling a bit.
Apparently his dip in form continued, leading to some talk about maybe Brahim starting instead next time.
So some selection headaches for the coaching staff in attack.
Or maybe just healthy competition, depending on how you look at it. Shows the squad depth.
Good point. And speaking of selection, Vinicius and Bellingham started on the bench for this one.
Yeah, both rested initially. Which seems sensible, doesn't it?
With Arsenal coming up in the Champions League, absolutely.
Definitely managing minutes. Though, Match Review did note Bellingham missed a pretty clear chance after coming on.
So even off the bench, still getting into positions.
Seems so. Shows the threat is still there, even if maybe not peak sharpness right from the start.
And one final point. Carlo Ancelotti wasn't there. His son, Davide, was in charge.
That's right. And Review had a quote from Davide saying he was very nervous at the beginning.
Can you imagine?
But that he enjoyed it. And crucially, he felt the win gives the team confidence heading into that massive Arsenal game.
That's key, isn't it? The psychological boost before a huge European tie.
Definitely. Shows the team's mindset is already shifting towards the Champions League. And Match Review confirmed their own analysis is going to focus on that Madrid-Arsenal matchup next.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this deep dive up. It sounds like, based on these sources, it was a really hard-fought win for Real Madrid.
Definitely. 1-0. Not exactly dominant, but they got the job done.
An eventful game, though. 2 red cards, some debated ref calls.
Yeah, plenty to talk about. But the bottom line is 3 points keeps them in the Liga picture.
And now all eyes turn to the Champions League and Arsenal.
Pretty much. They showed resilience, maybe some defensive solidity under pressure, but the reviews also hint at areas they'll want to be sharper in, especially against a team like Arsenal.
Right. So here's a final thought for everyone listening. We've heard about this win, gritty, maybe discreet, as one source put it. We've heard about Mbappe's moment of frustration and his apology. What does this specific victory, with all its complexities, actually tell you about Real Madrid's core resilience? And maybe more importantly, what does it suggest about their real chances, their potential in both La Liga and the Champions League? Which bit of this messy win feels most revealing about what's to come?
Something to think about.
Definitely. That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for tuning in.